Patti Kies, and I'm the worship facilitator for today's service. And yes, I am PowerPoint trained, but okay. Our musician today is Alex Chilsen, who gave you little sweet fills there. Childcare is available. Lily is with us. We are glad to have Philip Chard as our guest speaker. Lily is here with us. I'm going to read what's on the back flap of one of Philip's books. We already agreed this morning that not everything in here is today's information, but he'll give us today's. Philip Sutton Chard is an award-winning columnist for what now is the Shepherd Express, and he is a practicing psychotherapist. He has a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy, a Master of Science in Counseling Psychology, this says 20 years of experience as a counselor, a teacher, an emotional healer. He lives near Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He is one of our local favorites. And there's honestly a lot more to his background than went to print at that point of time. So it's great to have him. It's great to see all of you here today. I want to extend a special welcome to visitors and guests. We hope that you will all join us downstairs after the service for coffee and conversation. We have a few announcements. They were running on the slideshow that we tried to make stop running. And we have, from the auction committee chair, an announcement that I'm just going to step away and let him make.
Hello, I'm Gilles, and Auction Committee Chair. Just a couple announcements. First off, as I've said before, March is donation month, and March is coming to a close quickly. So the first thing that we are looking for is for you to, what we call the registrations of the donations, meaning tell us what you plan to donate. We're looking to have all those in, if possible, by next Sunday. So as per usual, most people kind of wait till the last minute. Good job. Now the last minute has arrived. So that's kind of how it always goes, so it's not really a thing to be worried about, but that's just how it goes. Just so people know, right about now we're at about $4,000, a little over $4,000 identified of the $10,000 goal, so we are making good progress. And just to give you a flavor of things that are available, we've got quilts, we've got bowls, we've got lots of options to go out to nights out to a concert or a play or a game night or a pizza dinner, and we're looking for more. So just keep that in mind. So we're looking to get the registrations, telling us what you want to donate by next Sunday, and then the following Sunday we'd like to have the items in, because the online auction will start on April 9th. So just that'll give us about a week to sort things out and get everything ready. If you were a bidder last year, the email went out today from the auction system. There'll be a broad email out with a link to the website, and you can start browsing things. So you'll see, as we're building it and up, you can look on the website and you'll see kind of what we're working on. So those are main things to keep in mind. Also, as we're getting closer to the auction, the live auction will be on the 22nd. Shane Rosenthal will be our caller, so it will definitely be entertaining. And with that, we are looking for some volunteers to help with there, either for registration at the door, and then also for people to just help track bidding. And that doesn't need we have people to do stuff on the computer, but we are going to want to have some people also just writing things down manually, just to help keep pace. And, as we know, sometimes technology doesn't work, so we want to have a hard copy of that. So those are the announcements for right now. Any questions while I'm here? We still need to determine that. It will be the evening. It will be the evening time, probably a 6 o'clock start. We have an auction meeting today, and we'll sort out the exact timing, but usual evening time, and those details will be coming. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Our order of service has gone back to being a physical print copy, and I am going to follow the order of service that we have, which says the chalice lighting is now before the call to worship. So, if you would, join me in the chalice lighting. Each Sunday, we light this flaming chalice. It is a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. So please join me if saying the words here on the wall. May this flame kindle within us the warmth of compassion, the glow of love, the fire of commitment, and the light of truth. Here together, we scatter and nurture seeds of spirit, service, and community. Now I'm going to tell you something else about the draft order of service that was ahead of me when I began on this. It didn't say anything about greeting the community. And I'm going to let you anyway. I'll do the call to worship in about a minute and a half. I have the thing in my hand. I'm going to ding it. Go ahead, meet other people. And that's why we take it out, because you can't stop. I know. Hit a chord, would you? Okay. All right. So we are very well able to prove why we have to think about whether that is going to always be part of our service. If you were watching the announcements, it said that there is a action committee meeting. There is also a worship team meeting on Tuesday, and things like what belongs in an order of service, in what order, is part of what we try to manage with that. And we can only manage you to such an extent. You're a bunch of Unitarian Universalists. Yes, that wasn't on the list, but yes, it is meeting today. So, now please center yourself for worship. I'm going to go that way. Some here this morning have never quite imagined themselves in certain situations, except maybe in a dream that you just wanted to wake up from. It's a pretty typical mode of operating to steer clear of being exposed when we are afraid. In recent weeks, I have noticed at least one voice saying, "I've never come up to speak here before, so this is big," at the Joys and Concerns microphone. And I heard someone say pretty much that same thing from the podium. We tend to prefer that it's someone else who shows themselves to be vulnerable. Did you hear Jeff say, "I'm glad it's not me today"? Okay. In an Atlantic Circle article offered in the Soul Matters materials to illustrate the science and psychology behind vulnerability, it was suggested that we may be attracted to someone showing their vulnerability. We might encourage them, try to provide a feeling of safety. Conversely, we are not often able to give that same warmth to ourselves, and we either try to hide our own vulnerability, or worse, we find it loathsome. This is the cultural equivalent of demonizing the vulnerable and dismissing the weak. I can guess that when Philip shares his thoughts with us, he may explain why mental illnesses are made harder to heal from by this phenomenon. While brainstorming this call to worship, I remembered a service that members of our congregation co-presented with the Elkhorn Church of the Lakes around 25 years ago. I made a trip then to one of our microphones, and I had written a credo, which is an entirely different thing to do than standing ahead of people who arguably were expecting something profound and reading it out loud. What I remember about that service was that I nearly crumbled, and that another member came and stood with me, physically connecting, holding my shoulder, supporting me so that I could draw strength and continue. She somehow protected me from the destructive ideas in my mind. I greatly valued that, and I doubt I'll ever forget it. There's a Swedish fairy tale that illustrates vulnerability in France's Wild Edge of Sorrow. It's about revealing what has long been sealed away under layers of scar tissue. It tells of a courageous maiden who eventually finds a prince beneath several skins on a rejected snake-like monster. She requests that he shed them one at a time, and she stays present to him as he becomes progressively more vulnerable. She scrubs away the last layers he can't escape from without someone showing him patience and compassion. Wellers follows this tale with an observation, and this is a quote. As we walk this path of grief, we need others to hold us, see us, and acknowledge the truth of our experience, even when they cannot fully understand what we are feeling. Grief is an immensely interior process that can only be navigated in the presence of community. For this reason, perhaps more than any other, we come together and offer strength and protection to those that make up our community of faith and reach beyond and outside its doors. Our first hymn is number 1002. It is in the Teal hymnal if you took hymnals, and it is here.
Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me. Soul, comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul.
So we have a story for all ages. The story is The Invisible Boy. It is by Trudy Ludwig, illustrated by Patrice Barton. Can you see Brian, the invisible boy? Even Mrs. Carlotti has trouble noticing him in her classroom. She's too busy dealing with Nathan and Sophie. Nathan has problems with what Mrs. Carlotti calls volume control. He uses his outside voice inside too much. Sophie whines and complains when she doesn't get her way. Nathan and Sophie take up a lot of space. Brian doesn't. When the bell rings for recess, Micah and JT take turns choosing kids for their kickball teams. The best players get picked first. Then the best friends of the best players. Then the friends of the best friends. Only Brian is left, still waiting and hoping. JT glances in Brian's direction and just as quickly looks away. We've got enough players for each team, he tells the others. Let's play ball. In the cafeteria, Madison and her friends talk about her birthday party. The rope swing over the pool was awesome, says JT. Yeah, so was the water slide, adds Fiona. That was the best pool party ever. I'm so glad you guys had fun, says Madison. Everybody did, except Brian. He wasn't invited. At choosing time, while the other kids play board games and read, Brian sits at his table doing what he loves to do best. He draws fire-breathing dragons, scaling tall buildings. And I'm going to read the little caption, "Thank you for toasting my marshmallow." He draws space aliens locked in intergalactic battles, greedy pirates digging for treasure, and superheroes with the power to make friends wherever they go. And I'm going to read that caption. Well, hi, friend, have a cookie. And if you look at that superhero, he resembles Brian. On Monday morning, Mrs. Carlotti introduces Justin, a new student, to the class. Brian smiles shyly at him. Some of the other kids sneak looks at Justin, trying to figure out if he's cool enough to be their friend. They haven't quite made up their minds yet. At lunch, Madison and JT watch Justin eat with chopsticks. "What's that?" Madison asks as she points at Justin's food. And he says, "It's bulgogi. It's Korean barbecued beef. My grandma made it for me. It's really good. Do you want to try some?" JT's, or whoever's speech bubble that says, "There is no way I'd eat bulgogi." And the kids laugh, all of them. That is, except Brian. He sits there wondering which is worse, being laughed at or feeling invisible. The next day, when Justin goes to his cubby to put away his backpack, he notices a piece of paper with his name on it. That piece of paper says, "Justin, I thought the bulgogi looked good. Brian." Recess, Brian finds a piece of chalk on the ground and starts drawing away. These say, "You're Brian, right?" "Yeah." "Thanks for the note." "Hey, Justin," Amelia calls out from the tetherball court. "You're up next." "Sorry, I gotta go," says Justin. "By the way, that's a really cool drawing," he adds before taking off. Back in class, Mrs. Carlotti asks the kids to team up in 2s or 3s for a special project. The kids scurry around the room to pair off. Brian heads towards Justin. "I'm already with Justin," says Emilio. Brian looks at the floor, wishing he could draw a hole right there to swallow him up. Justin's speech bubble says, "Mrs. Carlotti said we can have up to 3 people in our group. We're only 2. Come on, Emilio, let him work with us." Okay, I guess. Mrs. Carlotti gives the class directions for the project. Your assignment is to work together to write a story about what you see in that photograph. Use your imagination and have fun. "Whoa, cool," says Emilio. "What kind of people do you think would live in houses like that?" "I don't know, but I bet Brian could draw them to go with our story," says Justin. Brian smiles as he takes out his lucky pen. Now, before I click the page, I'm going to have you just look for a second. In fact, I'm going to go back. Look at Brian in this picture with a hand on his shoulder. He's not in gray anymore. And on this page, he is in full color. This page has no text to read, but they are working together. They are a creative team, and they present the crooked story that they made up on the spot with illustrations and costumes. It's lunchtime again, Brian's least favorite part of the day. Another long 20 minutes of talking, kids talking, laughing with everyone else but him. "Brian," he hears someone shout. "Hey, Brian, over here." Brian turns and sees Justin waving him over. Emilio nods at Brian as he makes room for him at the table. And he offers a cookie. Maybe, just maybe, Brian's not so invisible after all. So we sing out our children to classes.
Go lifted up, love bless your way. Moonlight, starlight, guide your journey into peace and the brightness of day.
Each week, we build our sense of community by sharing milestones in our individual lives, the joys and sorrows that make up who we are. If you have something to share, will you please come forward to this center microphone? Tell us your name and what's on your mind. Take a stone from the bowl, and as you do so, when you are finished, place the stone in the bowl with the water, and let the ripples carry your concerns to the wider community. Now I'm going to wonder about when that slide will come up. That's okay. We are now in the meditation and prayer part of the service. Philip is going to be reading the meditation rather than I. And I'm going to do the lead-in, and there is a hymn following. It is a go ahead and stay seated in a meditative pose. And a woman spoke, saying, "Tell us of pain."
And he said, "Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. Even as the stone of the fruit must break, that its heart may stand in the sun, so must you know pain. And could you keep your heart in wonder at the daily miracles of your life, your pain would not seem less wondrous than your joy. And you would accept the seasons of your heart, even as you have always accepted the seasons that pass over your fields. And you would watch with serenity through the winters of your grief. Much of your pain is self-chosen. It is the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self. Therefore, trust the physician and drink his remedy in silence and tranquility, for his hand, though heavy and hard, is guided by the tender hand of the unseen, and the cup he brings, though it burns your lips, has been fashioned of the clay, which the potter has moistened with his own sacred tears.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony. Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
So I figured it out. It's the joys and concerns slide. That's the joys and concerns response. And now, at this point in our service, we take our offering, where we would be giving power to the programs and needs of this community. So I give you Philip Chard.
Thanks, Patti. Good morning. Thanks for being here today. We're going to look at a very difficult topic and ask you to center yourself and consider what I'm about to share. A young boy is repeatedly bullied for being different. A little girl witnesses her mother slowly succumbing to cancer. Week after week, a nurse struggles to comfort the alone and dying in a COVID ward. A soldier holds their mortally wounded comrade in arms, bleeding out on the battlefield. A teenager is ostracized by their peers or cyber-bullied by nameless faces and doesn't know why. You know, I could go on in what often seems an endless litany of wounds and sorrows. Until recently, research into psychopathology placed far too little emphasis on recognizing and treating emotional trauma. There existed an antiquated mindset suggesting that once a bad experience was over, one would recover, even if gradually. This notion implied that all people are more or less equally resilient in the face of traumatic experiences. This is the same perspective that spawned the ideas of battle fatigue, a term suggesting that a stricken soldier is simply exhausted and with sufficient rest will bounce back to normal. By the way, I've been a psychotherapist, despite what's said in the book, a lot longer than 20 years. I've yet to encounter normal. We now realize that post-traumatic stress disorder, or what we call PTSD, which is common among combat veterans, first responders, and most recently, frontline healthcare workers, can, if untreated, fuel lifelong impacts undermining well-being or destroying lives altogether. This flawed perspective also gave rise to the oft-used adages, "What doesn't destroy you makes you stronger," and "time heals all wounds," and so forth. Responding to the latter, Rose Kennedy, the mother of JFK, noted, "I do not agree. The wounds remain in time. The mind, protecting its sanity, covers them with scar tissue. The pain may lessen, but it is never gone." Were that not the case, we would not be witnessing the perilous upward trajectory of trauma-induced dysfunction that's plaguing our population today. The destructive impacts of unresolved emotional trauma and the number of persons, both children and adults, grappling with the aftershocks of this wounding are vastly underestimated. Today we know that this affliction, all of its many guises, needs to be a central focus of psychological care and is just beginning to become so. While professionals like me argue over what to call these wounds, uncomplicated PTSD, complex PTSD, comorbid PTSD, unresolved emotional trauma, childhood adverse experiences, compassion fatigue, the words are many. But the surveys suggest that up to 80% of persons seeking psychotherapy and related treatments have a history of trauma, often from childhood, but not always. There's suffering in mind, body, and spirit. Physically, the symptoms of emotional trauma include the usual suspects: sleep disturbances, fatigue, chronic pain, headaches, generalized inflammation in the body, itself a catalyst of many other ills. The tally of emotional and behavioral impacts is greater still, including disruptive anxiety and depression, anger, rage, agitation and interpersonal conflicts, numbness, fears of going crazy, self-harming, substance abuse. I could go on. In the spiritual realm, PTSD, as we call it, can generate shame, hopelessness, guilt, existential dread, and loss of a higher purpose or connection with a greater good. The effects of these wounds commonly ripple out to damage relationships, spawning conflicts with others, job losses, family discord, and isolation. When emotional trauma occurs to a child, the worst of these impacts may not emerge until early adulthood or even later, but emerge they will. Voluminous research shows rates of depression, anxiety, and substance abuse, interpersonal dysfunction, and even suicide are much greater in victims of early childhood abuse and traumatic experiences, which brings us to one of the more vexing issues surrounding our societal perspective toward childhood trauma, a viewpoint that undermines the efforts to properly address its destructive impacts. In looking back at traumatic events from their childhoods, most adults minimize the extent and depth of the damage they have endured. Repeatedly, I hear clients, in referencing these early life traumas, particularly bullying or social rejection, say things like, it wasn't that big a deal, or I got over it, or we were just kids and kids do that. Assessing the damage of childhood trauma by applying an adult perspective is patently inaccurate and frankly unfair. As children, we are without the benefit of adult perspective. So the emotional wounds we suffer can be far more profound and harmful than had they occurred later in our lives. Now, we tend to regard emotional trauma as an individual experience. However, it also exists on a shared basis in social groupings, from families to workplaces, communities, even society at large. We experienced some of that during the worst of the COVID pandemic. Emotional contagion, as it is called, is very real. When trauma is experienced more broadly, such as from the pandemic or the terrorist attacks of 9/11, the emotional paroxysms of the divisive, hate-saturated elections we are undergoing that are still corroding, our well-being, we derive these, I lost my point here. Its impact extends far beyond individuals. That was my point, Phil. What's more, when our collective mindset undergoes emotional trauma, as individuals, we lose what comfort can be derived from recognizing that the world is okay, even if we aren't. When someone who is emotionally wounded peers out at a world that also appears to be suffering the same kinds of maladies, it can feel like there's nowhere to turn. There is, of course, as we shall soon examine, but that's how it feels at the time. Our collective wounding emerges in other data. The most recent World Happiness Report, ending in 2022, shows the United States ranks 16th worldwide in life satisfaction. Interestingly, those nations with higher rankings than our own are largely what sociologists call we societies, as opposed to me societies, meaning their populations ascribe more importance to the common good rather than every person for themselves. Those nations with higher degrees of life satisfaction assign greater value to social support, kindness, generosity, and fairness than we. Connecting this back with the effects of emotional trauma, when an afflicted individual lives in a society that is not collectively traumatized, they have a social and existential foundation to turn to for hope and solace. However, in a me society, such persons too often find that they feel on their own, grappling with their own psychological demons in relative isolation, which is why communities like your own are so important to those who've been wounded. Returning to the individual, how exactly does emotional trauma wreak its havoc on us? Many specialists in the field describe traumatic experiences as, quote, a branding iron on the brain, unquote. This metaphor contains a literal grain of truth. Happenings as far-ranging as childhood bullying to parental abuse, natural disasters to violent tragedies, with much else in between, can alter the structure and functioning of the brain and central nervous system. Just as other parts of the body sustain wounds caused by physical insult, injury, or disease, The brain can be damaged by the invisible cuts, if you will, inflicted by emotional trauma. But no longer as invisible as they might seem, neuroscientists can quite literally image the wounds from prior traumahood embodied in the morphology and operation of the brain. Like scar tissue from a physical wound, this hard wiring in one's neurology does not evaporate over time. Indeed, not unlike a malignancy, it remains embedded in the brain at a subcortical level, whereas corrosive impacts persist even over an entire lifetime. Additionally, recently we've discovered that there's something called generational trauma. At first we were incredulous, but we have now discovered that through genetic marking in people, we can be more susceptible to the wounds of emotional trauma if prior generations in our genetic lineage also suffered these insults. Additionally, we know that susceptibility to emotional trauma varies across individuals. Those who are what we call highly sensitive persons, or HSP, if you've heard that, are roughly 20% of the population, have fewer psychological defenses, leaving them more vulnerable to this kind of wounding. For the most part, children, by nature of their developmental stage in life, are much more sensitive to emotional wounds than adults, rendering most of them highly sensitive. In other words, susceptibility to emotional trauma is far greater in children and adolescents, although grown-ups who are highly sensitive carry this heightened vulnerability as well. Finally, the spiritual wounding from emotional trauma is often overlooked. In our zeal to diminish the psychological symptoms of PTSD, we often ignore its impacts on the afflicted individual's sense of meaning, purpose, and connection with life itself. Mentally re-inhabit, mentally re-inhabit, if you can, your mindset when you were a young child. As we gradually awaken to life and ourselves within it, most of us are open and therefore vulnerable. Our brains are wired to learn, to connect socially, to explore, to mentally incarnate, if you will, into this world. If during this period of openness, the world, whether through persons or other vectors, inflicts a traumatic wound on oneself, one's perspective toward and relationship with existence can be fundamentally altered, and not in a good way. When this happens, the world is no longer perceived as an emotionally safe place. Instead, it becomes populated with dangers, both seen and imagined. Like a child errantly placing its hand on a hot stove, what developmental psychologists call one-trial learning occurs. The brain is imprinted with this risk aversion, altering one's essential relationship with the world and often with others in it. An emotional wound becomes an existential one, precipitating a deep underlying wariness about life and living. As adults, we often repress this dread, but out of sight is not out of mind. Deep within the subcortical brain, or what we call the feeling brain, this angst persists, surreptitiously influencing our mindset, our mood, and behaviors. For instance, dive deeper into the psyche and soul of a cynical, angry adult, and more often than not, you will find a wounded child who's frightened and bitter toward existence itself. Thankfully, with most individuals, emotional trauma can be treated. While mental health types like your own, like yours truly, have a long way to go in this regard, in the past 2 decades, better forms of care have emerged. Some of them, in some of these healing approaches, fall under the umbrella of self-care, as we love to call it, while others require the assistance of properly trained therapists, ministers, or physicians. One promising area includes something called brain-based therapies, or neurosomatic therapies, if you will. One of these is something you may have heard called EMDR. This is a classic example of people in the mental health profession telling you things you already know in words you can't understand. EMDR stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing, and whoever thought that up needs help of their own kind. Another method that we have seen emerge recently that's related to EMDR is something called, equally opaque, brain spotting. And another is called active memory release. What's unique about these is that unlike talk therapy, these approaches seek to activate the afflicted individual's emotional trauma in a controlled manner that catalyzes the brain's innate capacity to heal. For example, if any of you have ever undergone EMDR, or as I have, or have seen it, you'll notice that one of the things the therapist does when the individual is recalling their emotional trauma is they have them move their eyes rapidly back and forth. This seems like some sort of woo-woo voodoo from my profession. But what we really know about it is that when you're sleeping at night and dreaming, you're in what we call REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement sleep. And if you could see your eyes while you're dreaming, they'd be doing exactly the same thing that we do in EM. So what the method does is it taps into the brain's own innate capacity for processing emotional wounding. And I think that's pretty cool. At any rate, these kinds of methods do try to tap into that innate capacity that the brain has, just like the rest of the body, to try to heal itself. These therapies, when successful, draw on what you've heard as neuroplasticity, which thankfully is the brain's capacity to rewire itself, to rewire the networks that are locked into the trauma into a healing capacity. And on occasion, interestingly enough, these therapies work so far outside the realm of talking and even understanding that the therapist does not even need to know the specific nature of the client's traumatic event in order to initiate the healing process. That's real progress. 20 years ago, when I was also practicing, we did not have these tools at our disposal. Another recent and promising method, which some of you may have heard of, and which is, of course, controversial, like most things in our culture, is psychedelic therapy. Again, in a controlled environment with trained therapists, the client ingests a medicinal dose of a hallucinogenic drug. Psilocybin, mescaline, LSD, all those things you were told to fear, all potent hallucinogenic substances. Research into this approach, which is now occurring across the United States and most prominently at Johns Hopkins, shows very promising results for addressing things like PTSD, along with related mood disorders. In many cases, the research now shows us, as is about to go to the FDA for approval, a single administration and session is sufficient to bring about lasting improvement in the individual. I'm not suggesting there's no place for traditional talk therapy in treating unresolved emotional trauma. Even with brain-based and psychedelic therapies, a vital prerequisite for success requires developing a strong empathic connection and rapport between therapist and client. That support that we all need that can so often be lacking. Without this, without that connection and support, the techniques themselves often prove insufficient. This therapy, what's more, talk therapy rather, helps affected persons gain perspective on their situation so they can understand the nature of the trauma, and it prepares them neurologically for the treatments that don't involve so much talk. In the realm of self-care, there are methods that, while more passive in style, show considerable promise. Nature therapy, or eco-psychology as we call it, is a powerful example. An explosion of research over the past 15 years has demonstrated the remarkable capacity of nature immersion to help heal the wounds of emotional trauma. I'm not talking about walking through the woods just to get in your 10,000 steps or with the earbuds blasting into your brain. Nature immersion, which is sometimes called forest bathing, involves placing oneself in a copacetic natural environment and then remaining there for a time, tuning one's senses into the sights, sounds, scents, and touches of that place. Not only does this diminish anxiety and reduce stress and also uplift the mood, but it also provides existential reassurance, a timeless sense of it's okay. Also, there are programs in which nature therapists accompany clients on wilderness quests, sometimes simultaneously using these other methods, like brain spotting, to amplify the healing impact. Meditation, prayer, and other contemplative practices also appear to support this healing, even if not always occupying a central role. However, the focus of one's practice, contemplative practice, matters in this regard. Contemplative work that nurtures forgiveness and self-compassion generate a healing influence. A recent Harvard study showed that we humans think a lot. We have tens of thousands of thoughts every day in our brains. And the research shows up to 2/3 of those thoughts are negative. And most of the negative thoughts are not in reference to somebody else. They're in reference to ourselves. So self-compassion is one of the steeper hills to climb in the self-care world. The question of whether to forgive the people who caused one's wounding, should that be the case, is best addressed later in the healing process, yet it represents an important spiritual challenge. As one person put it, quote, "You need to accept the apology of those who wounded you, even if they never offered it." And as theologian, Willis Smedes reminded us, to forgive is to set a prisoner free and to discover the prisoner was you. Buddha said that resentment and bitterness is a burning coal we hold in our own fist. It burns us, not that person we are bitter towards. So when we forgive and let go of that hot coal, we do begin to heal ourselves. Love, compassion for others and self, and forgiveness, these are the spiritual tonics that salve traumatic wounds. Again, often one must pursue first, laying a foundation that makes the power of love possible. Sometimes, unconditional love and acceptance from another human being provides the final remedy for the deeply wounded soul. While not available to all, when present, the healing power of love is the most potent of all the therapeutics that we know. Finally, a cinematic yet true illustration. Let me make sure I didn't jump over something. Yes, we're good. A cinematic yet true illustration of this power emerges in a film some of you may have seen called A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. It's a story, of course, about Mr. Rogers and a cynical, bitter journalist wounded by emotional trauma from his youth encounters the unconditional acceptance of love in Mr. Rogers. And then the healing begins. Not as a result of some technique, valuable as those can prove to be at times, but from the presence of a forgiving, compassionate connection with another human being. Meaning each of us, knowing someone else who is wounded in our lives, have the potential capacity to be a power of healing for that individual. And in doing so, should we take that on, we also heal ourselves. Our world is wounded, as are we within it. Each of us must first heal ourselves and then do our best to help heal others. For the traumatized, that may seem a huge ask, and it often is. However, there is a truth that sometimes offers hope to us all in this challenge, stated by Helen Keller, who said, "The world is full of suffering, but it is also full of the overcoming of it. Thank you. Peace.
A we society.
A we society.
Would you please read
Would
this?
you please read this
Responsive reading with me.
responsive reading with me?
You'll read the italics.
You'll read the italics.
We are caught in an
We are caught
inescapable
in an
network
inescapable
of
network
mutuality,
of mutuality,
tied in a single
tied in a
garment
single
of destiny.
garment of destiny.
There are some things in our
things
social
in our
system
social
to which
system
all of us
to
ought
which
to
all
be
of us ought to be
maladjusted.
maladjusted.
We must evolve.
We must evolve
for all human conflict.
for all human conflict.
A method which rejects revenge, aggression,
revenge,
and
aggression,
retaliation.
and retaliation.
Before it is too
Before
late,
it is
we
too
must
late,
narrow the
we must
gaping
narrow the
chasm
gaping
between our
chasm between our
proclamations of peace
proclamations of
and our
peace
lowly
and our
deeds,
lowly
which
deeds,
precipitate
which
and
precipitate
perpetuate
and
war.
perpetuate war.
We must pursue peaceful ends
peaceful
through peaceful
ends through
means.
peaceful means.
If it was vaguely familiar,
it's
it's
Martin Luther King Jr.
We have one last hymn.
We have one last hymn.
My senses hear the earth fall, feel the deep power of being known. Keep with the web of creation your power, giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now, my reason, reach out to the new. Join with these pilgrims who quest for the truth. Honor, beauty, and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limits and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the call. Voices of suffering fill the sky. Take as your neighbor, both stranger and friend. Praying and striving, their hardships to end.
I say There are those verses.
There are those verses.
We are a little
Past and
we're going to enjoy our coffee hour
time.
Okay. The closing words today are from Rachel Carson, from her writing Silent Spring. Those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. There is something infinitely healing in the repeated refrains of nature. The assurance that dawn comes after night and spring after winter. He knows his lead in.
Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. I said it's alright. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. I said. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. I said it's alright. Here comes the